When you talk about the retirement planning process, we're thinking about, well, what do I want to spend what am I going to enjoy my time doing? What am I going to travel? What are my hobbies? What are the things that that I really have fun doing? That's the fun part. But again, the reality of the situation is retirement ultimately means we are getting older. And as we get into our older ages, what do I need to think about to make my life as simple as possible? Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to educate and empower women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner for over 25 years, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Joining me again is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. So I've got to confess something. This is something that's probably going to cost me a lot of money at some point.
Uh-oh.
So I shared, I think in the last episode, that our granddaughter was with us, right? We picked her up. She's been with us for almost a week. And she's learned something that I realized I will never be able to say no to.
Okay.
Her parents, my daughter has always taught her to say please and thank you and all those good things. But somehow she's learned to put a spin on the word thank you when she's asking for something that I just know I'm never going to be able to say no. She's gonna.
Oh, give me an example.
So she goes, can I have a snack? Instead of just saying please, she goes, can I have a snack, please? And so she adds the extra oomph on this, and I can't say no. That's just it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but
it's the please that she's doing.
It's not it's a, can I have a snack, please?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's the tone and the emphasis on the word please.
Oh yeah.
Or she'll go, please.
Please. That's the most important thing of my life right now.
Can I have a snack, please?
Please, I need it.
All right, yes, so you can have one.
Well, you're an old softy now, so.
Next is going to be, can I have $1, please? Can I have a 20, please?
See, my grandparents never gave us money, so that wasn't never an issue.
It's over. I'm already, there's no chance.
No, you're done for.
That's it. Yeah. So, but yeah, she's been with us for a week now. It's been amazing.
And how much longer?
So she's with us for another, 4 days. So we take it back on Saturday.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll be about 10 days total that she's been with us by the time we're headed back. But it's fun. Yeah, it's just crazy to see just since she's learned the please just since she was here last time. It has only been a few months ago.
Yeah.
But the other things, what she says, what she does, she entertains herself. That's for sure. She's very funny. But it's been amazing. So we've had a lot of fun with her.
Yeah. Well, and it's always good when they can entertain themselves, right?
Yes. All right, so since this might put me in the poorhouse someday, today we're going to be talking about where to live in retirement.
See the way that was tied all in together?
Bring it all together, right? Well, what's interesting, this topic has actually come up several times in conversations in our retirement planning practice. And what stood out in these conversations is how important it is to look at this decision from different angles, right? Not just from the financial side, but also from the practical lifestyle considerations and even the emotional side that might come into play as well. But taking all these things in before making any decisions, or for us, in our case, before making any type of specific recommendations. And even if it is a financial decision, which it often can be, it's how do you choose where to live? So that's what I wanted to talk about today, is just taking this bigger, more important question of where should I live in retirement? And more importantly, how to think about this decision as part of an overall process, not just this one-time choice that you're going to be making. And if you're leaning toward maybe staying in your current home, we're also going to talk about what to think about now to help ensure that the decision works well for you over time, along with how to prepare for potential changes or transitions that may come later in life.
Okay.
And then also touching on how this decision may change if you find yourself making the decisions on your own later in life, which for many women becomes an important part of that conversation as well. So for all the links, we're going to be sharing some different resources. So be sure to check out the show notes for some links and resources where you can visit us at thesimplyretirementpodcast.com. And as always, if you have a question, topic idea, a specific retirement challenge that you'd like to hear covered on an upcoming episode, you can visit thesimplyretirementpodcast.com/Ask Eric.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it. All right. So let's start with the big question. Where should I live in retirement? Because for many people, the conversation sometimes just starts with one specific solution, like downsizing, right? That's always a big part of the conversation. When people are getting ready to retire, should I downsize? And on paper, certain options can seem like they're very straightforward solutions. So I sell the home, I move to somewhere more that's smaller, I reduce my expenses. In reality, though, it's not always that simple, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Many people do not want to move at all in retirement. And even when they do, the decision is rarely just about the size of the house that they're going to move to. Because we think about a home and it's not just a financial asset. There's emotions, it's familiarity, it's tied to your returns, your memories, your community. And for many women, again, especially after the loss of a spouse, it's no longer a shared decision, and it becomes a very personal one when you're thinking about, should I stay, should I go?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good. When we bought this house, I love this area. I live on the water. I have no intentions of moving ever for a retirement home. This is where I plan to live for the rest of my life.
And that's a lot of the way people think is this is where again, I've got my memories. I've got hopefully the people around you that you want to spend time with, even in retirement. And that's really why we want to step back and make sure we're asking the right questions. Because when you step back from focusing on just a simple solution like downsizing, hopefully that decision becomes a little bit more clear, because it's not a question about, okay, square footage and just living in a smaller place. It's about lifestyle and what really tends to matter more over time. So we start thinking about first support and connection. Who is nearby? Family, friends, neighbors. And this becomes really important if you are or may eventually be on your own. And we also think about access and mobility. So right now, driving may be easy, but what about later? Are you still going to be able to get to the places you need to go? And can you still stay active and engaged in what's around you?
Okay.
And then we have to, unfortunately, think about healthcare access. Not just today, when you're early in retirement or just prior to retiring, but what about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? What is that situation going to look like for you at that point as well?
Can we figure that out? No, of course we can't.
We cannot. But again, it should be part of the decision, especially if you're thinking about moving, or if I really want to stay where I'm at, having a plan. I think that ultimately that's where we're going to go with all this, is just having a plan for what's this going to look like over the next 5, 10, 15 years of retirement.
A big issue around here is, since we do live on the water, a lot of houses are built up. So we have a lot of stairs. So that's always been an issue. Some people build in elevators.
Right.
We don't have that. We're not that high to begin with, but we do have about 6 or 7 steps we have to go in every day. So.
Right. And when we get to that point of, okay, what are some ideas or considerations in staying in your home? I'm going to share a story that we actually dealt with a client that she's faced a number of those same challenges. But also the last thing I wanted to touch on as far as thinking about where you want to live is that community and the engagement. Who are you going to spend time with? Who do you want to go to lunch with? Who are you going to have coffee with? And for you, who are you going to be playing pickleball with?
Well, that's all set. You know that.
But again, because retirement is not just about where you live, it's about how you're living, right? And this also connects to something we talked about in a previous episode. It's been a while now, but the idea that in retirement, you're going to have roughly 1,000 hours that are just going to be yours to choose to spend that time how you would like. And when you start thinking about how you're going to do that, how you're going to spend that time, and what you want your days to look like, who you want to spend time with, what activities matter to you, your location, your environment play a much bigger role than some people might initially realize. Right? And that's the other thing I want to get. I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time just directly on downsizing, even though that's one of the key factors for many people. So I would also refer you to, if you really want a deeper dive on the conversation we had not too long ago about downsizing, and saying we had a client that was going through that decision of, do I downsize and rent? What do I do? If I'm going to downsize, what should that decision look like? And this one, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on just, again, the overall considerations and factors that you want to think about as you think, you're deciding where do I want to live in retirement. And back to your point when you talked about, the stairs, that's one of the things you have to think about as well, because, we don't want to think about this. I'm a big process person, as people may have picked up as we've done some of these episodes. And I know people don't want to think about housing as a process, but it really needs to be. Because for most people, it's not just a single decision. It is a series of decisions made over time. And for some of you that might be wanting to stay exactly where you are, that's okay, but you want to be intentional about it. And if you're considering staying, you want to ask yourself things like, can this home work for me long-term? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that may mean, if it's not, that may mean making some updates, right? Some simple changes that might make your home safer, easier to live in as you get older, as you age. And we've talked about, again, some of these financial reasons, but in reality, very few people, again, they don't want to approach this as a process, but by not doing so, it might come with a much greater cost financially or even emotionally, as some of these decisions have to maybe be made for you as you get older.
What do you mean? Because you're not in the right capacity to make the decision?
Right. So you're in a situation where, right. So if you're having to make decisions today, does it make sense to start looking at some of the decisions you could make now in preparation for what your future might look like, versus saying, okay, well, I don't want to deal with that. And somebody ends up having to make those decisions for you, whether that's family, whatever the case might be, depending on what your care needs are. And again, that's the part that unfortunately is a big unknown.
Okay.
And speaking of that, we were talking about your situation in the stairs, and we actually have a client who we're working with her. She's in her 80s. She lives with her home in her home with her daughter, and so there's very real reasons why moving is really not a simple decision for her. There's emotions, there's financial aspects that practically, and staying where she's at just makes sense. But the challenge is, of all the key areas, they call it leaving areas, the bedroom and bathrooms are upstairs.
Ah.
Right. While the main living space is downstairs. And for a period of time, that was okay.
Okay.
Right. But recently she experienced a fall, and suddenly something as simple as going up the stairs became extremely difficult and even risky. Right. And on top of that, the bathroom was the traditional step-in tub and shower, which for her became really tough to navigate. And again, that could be the case for many people as they get older. Right. And under those circumstances, there was no longer a future planning conversation. It was something that had to be addressed right then, right? Because she had experienced the fall. She had to figure out, what do I do, right? And this is something where, again, back to the advanced planning of thinking, okay, if I'm going to stay here, are there things I can be proactive about now? Or in her case, it was immediate. We had to figure out, how do we do this? So we connected her with some resources that could help her evaluate and make some modifications. But the bigger takeaway are, these are the kinds of things that are very easy to overlook early in your retirement, not thinking about what some of these challenges are going to be later on in retirement. When you're thinking about, well, I'm just going to stay in my current home.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are planning on staying in your home, again, you might find yourself making these decisions on your own. And the house decision becomes one of the most important pieces of maintaining your independence, right? And so what are the things I can do proactively, thinking of making these big decisions as I look at retirement or getting into retirement? Am I in the right spot now? Even in my grandmother's case, several years ago, we had her guest bathroom converted from a step-in tub to a walk-in shower. And at the time, it was kind of a nice to have. And as she's gradually lost a lot of her mobility, and now at 91, she needs assistance with bathing, that change has made a significant difference in her ability to remain in her home, right? And it's not inexpensive. But again, that's where the planning comes in. Planning ahead does not just mean thinking about what needs to change. It also means understanding what the costs are and making sure that you have a plan in place for those potential changes. Again, depending on if you want to stay in your own home.
Now, when it comes to like stairs inside the house, they have those chairs.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also do ramps outside if you don't have a ton of steps like we do. So, if you can just keep that in mind and then keep the cost of it in mind as well.
Right. Well, and I think that's, again, ultimately saying, when you talk about the retirement planning process, we're thinking about, well, what do I want to spend what am I going to enjoy my time doing? What am I going to travel? What are my hobbies? What are the things that I really have fun doing? That's the fun part. But again, the reality of the situation is, retirement ultimately means we are getting older. And as we get into our older ages, what do I need to think about to make my life as simple as possible when it comes to navigating my house? Or do I feel comfortable with the idea of saying, okay, I'm going to be in my house for some period of time? And we have clients in that same situation as well, where it's more just, okay, we know eventually we're going to have to do something. We're not going to be able to maintain the yard. There's some larger properties where they've got a decent amount of land. So we're here in Texas, and they're saying, okay, at some point, I'm not going to want to mow the grass. I'm not going to want to do this. I'm not going to want to do that. And physically, it becomes much more challenging over time as well. So the reality is that there's going to have to be a transition at some point. It's now just, what does that decision look like? And how do we go about making that decision? Same thing. I would encourage them to think about a lot of these factors that we've already touched on. And say, okay, yes, we knew we were going to have to transition at some point. What is that next phase of life going to look like? Where would we go? Do we still want to be close to family? Do we still want to be close to the things that we enjoy doing? And the answer is most likely yes. But now, how do we look at it from a financial perspective, an emotional perspective, and a practical lifestyle perspective so that all those pieces fit together?
It's a lot of pieces.
A lot of pieces. Hi, everyone. It's Eric. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. I want to take just a quick moment to share a resource I think you'll find really valuable. If you've ever asked yourself, how much is my Social Security reduced if I file early? Or am I eligible for benefits as a spouse, surviving spouse, or even after divorce? You're not alone. That's why we created our ultimate guide to women's Social Security success. It includes 6 of our most popular Social Security guides and checklists for women. Inside, you'll find a 2026 quick reference guide with key Social Security amounts and limits to be aware of, along with 5 additional guides and checklists to help you make more informed decisions about eligibility and filing strategies. You can download it for free at womenssocialsecurityguide.com. Keep it handy wherever you may be in the decision-making process. Now, back to the episode. When you're asking that question, where should I live in retirement? The financial side has to be part of the answer, but we don't want it to be the whole answer. And even when this starts as a financial decision, we still want to make sure that it aligns with how you want to live day to day. And one of the reasons that people consider making a move into retirement is to potentially free up equity. And that's a really tough decision now when you're thinking about, we've kind of seen the real estate markets calm down a little bit depending on where you're located. But a lot of people still have significant amounts of equity in their home. And we have to start thinking about where does that fit into this equation as well, right? But that's where we think about these decisions also come with a cost. So if we're going to, again, back to the downsizing, and you may not even choose to downsize, it might just be geography. I might just want to live somewhere else. And again, I may want to be closer to grandparent or to grandchildren. I want to be close to the things I want to do. Even somebody said the great idea at one point, somebody that says, I really want to travel in retirement. I want to do a lot of traveling. Move closer to the airport.
Hey,
right?
That's something I would have never thought of.
Right. And so again, it's just being thoughtful and intentional about making these decisions. But you obviously know those decisions also come with costs. We've got moving costs, we've got new housing costs, ongoing expenses. Right now, one of the big decisions we have a conversation we have quite a bit is, if I'm going to sell my house that has a pretty good amount of equity built up, do I use that equity to just pay cash for the house?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things you have to think about as well, especially if you're in a house where you've got a much lower interest rate. If you've been in that house for quite a while and you've got a low interest rate, and now if you were to take out a new mortgage, what's that interest rate going to look like today versus even just 5, 6, 7 years ago, right?
Yeah, double or even more. Yeah.
And so again, not that it can't be done, but we've got to include that in our analysis of what is my retirement income scenario going to look like? How much income am I going to have? How is that going to change my cash flow needs? And then also, of course, what are the ongoing expenses? I think that's one of the things people become challenged with as well, is thinking about what are the maintenance costs of a house. A lot of people want to have a house. They want to be the owner of a house. They don't necessarily like to rent. And there's positives and negatives of both. But knowing that even if you have a paid off house, you're still going to have ongoing costs, right? Whether that's maintaining the yard, whatever it might be. And
taxes.
Just the taxes, property taxes, and especially depending on what state you're in, where if you got property taxes, you're still going to have homeowners insurance. You're still going to have costs. But again, it just comes down to what are my financial resources? How can I make, again, back to the pieces of the puzzle, how do we start making all this fit together in a way that makes sense? And there are more people who are actually entering retirement with mortgages, especially if you have one that's at a lower rate, right?
Yeah.
And again, you got that question of, do I keep it? Do I pay it off? What am I going to do? And there's no right answer. And I think the key is just understanding what the trade-offs are and making sure the decisions support your overall retirement plan.
Well, another reason I think that is, and it's probably off topic, but a lot of people are having to wait until they're older, more established, before they can purchase a house.
Right. And again, there's a lot. And that's why geography is such an interesting variable in this whole conversation, is because you have different, actually, if you're in California versus in Texas, or even where you're at in New Jersey, thinking about what is the cost to buy a house, right? And what are the ongoing expenses going to be versus renting? And I think that's really where, you got to think about, and you think about one of the mistakes I see quite a bit, and not necessarily, I can't recall that a client recently has come to us with this question, But thinking about so many people, there's always the typical move from New York down to Florida.
Right. Yes.
And thinking about, well, I'll just move to Texas because there's lower property, there's no state income tax.
Right.
And then they get that first property tax bill and they're like, what the heck? So again, and that's really when you're making those decisions, is evaluating everything. Again, nobody necessarily wants to think about it financially, but that financial component has to be part of the conversation, along with what do I want to spend my time doing? Who do I want to be near? Those are all important things. And again, I think it's overall, and just looking at your overall retirement scenario to make the best decision.
Okay.
All right. So as we get ready to wrap everything up, I think, again, it gets back to where you live in retirement is not just a single decision. It should be a process. And looking at what matters most is where you feel connected, how easily can you live your daily life, access to things like care and support, and whether your current home can adapt to your needs as they change over time. And just as important, how prepared you are for how those needs may change over time. And part of that process is recognizing that where you live today may not be where you live forever. And so when you come back to that bigger question, where should I live in retirement? I think the better answer is it's going to depend on what you want your life to look like, how prepared you are for how that may change, right? And if this is something you're actively thinking about, I would also encourage you to go back and listen to a couple of earlier episodes where we did go deeper into some of these other topics, including a deeper dive specifically on different housing options. I touched on that earlier, on downsizing versus renting. Also navigating solo aging. We had Carol Maroc on very early on in the podcast as a solo aging expert. And she actually shares some of the process she went through to make decisions on where she now lives in her retirement years. And then also, I believe it was episode 21, Navigating Senior Living Decisions, where Joyce Logan actually talked about that transition from your own home into a independent living community or even an assisted living community, depending on what your healthcare needs are as you go through those retirement years. And again, we'll share all the links to those episodes in the show notes.
So let me ask you a question. Are you familiar, and I'm not meaning to insult you by any means, so I'm about to insult you. No, I'm just kidding. Do you know what a snowbird is?
I've heard of it. So meaning living in part of the area, probably one area for a period of time. And then, yes, absolutely. We actually have a client that does that.
That's huge in my area. We'll live, here at the shore for 9 months of the year, but let's say January, February, March, we're going down to Florida or we're out to Arizona, and we're going to take advantage of the warm weather there. So that's another thing that, it's very, very common here.
Again, that can work really well. But again, what's my plan going to be from a financial perspective on how that's going to work? Am I going to own? Am I going to rent in those different locations?
Right.
So we have a client who they live in Michigan. That's where their home is. That's where most of their family is. But then they transition down to Florida. They've got an RV. And so they've got, which is really cool. And we hear the stories about they've got friends at both locations. They go fishing and they do all the things in Florida. And when it starts to get warmer, when hometown, then they'll transition back. But they've been doing that for several years now, and they love it.
Wow.
And I think that's really where there's many ways of accomplishing all this, right? But I think, again, it's being intentional about what do I want to spend my time doing and who do I want to do it with. And I think those are all factors that need to be taken into consideration. And I think it's a great idea as long as you've thought through all the ins and outs, all the details to make sure it's going to work from a financial perspective and lifestyle perspective.
Yeah, I think I'll hang out with my husband. Pretty sure.
You think you want to spend time with him?
I think maybe. Well, yeah.
Sometimes, right? At least part of the time, anyway.
Yeah. Let's get him a little hobby or something that gets him out of the house for a little bit.
There's a show that Dawn and I, my wife, just started watching. And I'm also Shrinking. Have you seen this?
Oh, yeah. Well, we haven't seen this season, but it is so good.
So we're actually on the first season. We just started it. I think.
So
hopefully,
good.
I think that's one. But that's where there's the neighbor who's very involved in everybody's lives around her.
The busybody.
Right. And her husband's about to retire. And they have that conversation about, she's telling him, well, you've got to I need my space. You got to find something to do outside the house. And he basically said, I've been working so long. You need to find something.
She's very in your face. She does not hold back. So, but I'm glad you're watching that. It's a very good show.
We just started watching it. Yeah, that's kind of, we just saw that conversation just happened on the last episode that we watched about him saying, no, you need to find, I've been working for the last 30 years or whatever it was.
So you're saying that's what my husband's going to say to me?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But I want to put words in his mouth.
Oh, okay. I'll have a talk with him, and we're going to sit down and go over what you just said he's going to say.
That's right. Don't bring me into it though. I didn't say.
Oh, I'm bringing you into it.
Awesome. Well, as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Wendy, for joining me once again. If you're trying to decide where you want to live in retirement and you just want to understand how that decision fits into your overall retirement plan, you can visit getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com to schedule a call with our team. That's it for today's episode. Again, for all the links and resources mentioned today, visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, follow, and share the show. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.